There was once a man in Hong Kong whose crimes were so grotesque and inhuman that they shocked the city to its core. He wasn't just a murderer, he was a monster. A man who brutally took the lives of two innocent young girls, violated their corpses, and then, in an act of pure horror, bound his own three children to a gasoline tank and detonated in front of their helpless mother. And why? Because he believed in a dark, twisted ritual, the so-called five ghost vengeance curse. He sacrificed his own flesh and blood to cast a spell of revenge on his wife. Can you even begin to imagine it? His crimes were so gruesome that when Hong Kong's infamous horror film, The Devil Butcher, was made, it was his story that inspired its most chilling scenes. On the afternoon of December 20, 2002, at 4 p.m., the police station in Pak Shan Tsuen, Yuen Long District, Hong Kong, received a call from a local villager. The caller reported that a man named Tong Wing Queen was screaming hysterically inside his home, threatening to take his own life. But that wasn't all. He claimed he had tied three children to a gasoline tank, and if anyone dared to enter, he would set everything on fire. The police and fire department arrived at the scene, but given to Tong's unstable mental state, they hesitated to take action. Instead, they surrounded the house, hoping to de-escalate the situation. Negotiators tried everything. They pleaded, they reasoned with him, they begged him to let the children go. But Tong only repeated one phrase over and over. Has Ashan arrived yet? The Ashan he was referring to was his wife, Po Lao Shan, who had run off with another man just 1 month prior. With the entire village in an uproar, news of the station quickly reached Po Lao Shan. He rushed to the scene, but the police refused to let her meet him, fearing that it would provoke him further. Tong's mother-in-law and sister-in-law also tried to talk him down, but nothing worked. Every second that passed away was filled with uncertainty and danger. To ensure the safety of the three children, the firefighter made a decision: break down the door and enter. The moment the door swung open, the stench of gas filled the air, and in that same instant, Tong lit the fire. A massive explosion erupted, shattering windows, sending flames roaring through the house. But the firefighters were ready. They stormed inside, battling the flames, racing against time and against all odds. They managed to rescue all three children. And then came the most chilling revelation. These weren't just any children. They were Tong Wing Queen's own flesh and blood. His own three children was Peng Lao Sheng. The oldest was only 5 years old. And yet, even after the explosion, Tong wasn't satisfied. Fearing that his children might survive, he tied one of them to a leaking gas tank, fixing a red rope around the child's waist, as if offering them up to something far more sinister. Tong himself was badly burned, his face and hands covered in blood, convulsing on the ground, but still very much alive. As paramedics rushed the children to the hospital, the police finally stepped inside to investigate. And what they found was even more horrifying than the explosion itself. Inside the closet, they discovered a photo of Po Lao Shang nailed to a wooden board with 5 iron nails. Besides it, the words, Po Lao Shang, Birth and Death, August 1, 1980. And beneath it, a white clothes bundle. Carefully, the officers unwrapped it, and inside was the lifeless body of a young girl. He was still wearing her school uniform. The forensic team examined her. She had been dead for over a day. Her lower body bore severe injuries, suggesting she had been violently assaulted. And then they made the most disturbing discovery of all. There were traces of baby oil in her rectum. Nearby, on the iron-framed bed, police found a pillow stained with saliva and strands of her hair. A fingerprint match confirmed her identity. She was In Pyu Shang, a 10-year-old girl who had been missing for over 10 days. On December 3, 2002, 10-year-old In Pyu Shang vanished. That day, after school, she never returned home. Her mother, Miss Yin, waited until nightfall, but there was no sign of her daughter. Worried, she rushed to the school to ask the teachers, but the answer chilled her to the bone. She left right after school. She didn't stay behind. Panic set immediately. Miss Yin didn't waste another second. She ran straight to the police station and filed a missing person report. Investigators dug into the case. They discovered something alarming. Just 2 weeks prior, another girl had also disappeared. On December 4, 2002, a 11-year-old girl, Chen Luckman, had left home at 6 p.m. and never returned. Both girls were around 10 years old. Both had similar delicate features, oval faces, long dark hair, quiet and well-mannered. Both lived in Yuen Long. Both disappeared in Yuen Long. Even more unsettling, both had been wearing red jackets when they vanished. The police had no choice but to entertain a terrifying possibility. A predator was on the loose. A man who was specifically targeting young girls. and given the pattern of the crimes, there was a strong chance he would strike again. The entire Ringlong district plunged into fear and paranoia. Parents clutched their children's hands tighter than ever before. No one wanted their children to be the next to disappear. As detectives combed through missing persons records, they stumbled upon a disturbing discovery. The details of these cases were eerily similar to a case from 4 years earlier. Back in 1998, a 9-year-old girl named Lun Wan-wai had disappeared under near identical circumstances, and her body was never found. Could this be the same killer? Could the monster who took Lun Wan-wai be at it again 4 years later? If so, it meant they weren't just dealing with a kidnapper, they were dealing with a serial predator. The police sprang into action, launching a 4-way investigation. One team hit the street, handing out missing persons flyers. One team reopened the 1998 case, trying to track down old leads. One team visited Chang Lok-man's school, interviewing students and teachers. One team did the same at the Im Pyu-sham's school. Most of their efforts turned up nothing until they started talking to the girl's classmates. At Chang Lok-man's school, her friend Ping Ping revealed a crucial clue. Chang Lok-man loved twins, the famous Kanto-top duo. She often went to Yunlong Plaza's Yes Station, a stationery shop, to collect and trade holographic cards of the pop star. With this new lead, police rushed to Yunlong Plaza. They pulled the security footage from the nights she disappeared. There, at 7:30 p.m. on December 4, 2002, Chang Lok-man was seen leaving Yes Station, holding a newly purchased item. She walked onto the pedestrian bridge outside the mall, and then, just like that, she vanished from the camera's view. That was the last recorded sighting of Chang Lok-man. The investigation at Im Pyu-sham's school yielded another crucial lead. Her classmates revealed that she loved going to Bawang Amusement Arcade, a gaming center in Samhap-ye Plaza. Following this lead, officers combed through surveillance footage from the arcade and surrounding area. And that's when they found it, a small minibus station, where a security camera had captured Im Pyu-sham standing next to a man. The footage showed them talking briefly before getting on the same minibus together. The police initially assumed they knew each other, but when they showed the footage to her family, her parents shook their heads. They had never seen this man before. The footage was low quality, only showing the man's back. He was about 1.63 meters tall, looked between 35 to 45 years old, and walked with a slight hunch. It wasn't much to go on, but it was more than enough, because after exhaustive background check, police identified the man. He was Tong Wing-kwang, the same man who, weeks later, would attempt to blow up his own children. And then, as if confirming their worst fears, Im Pyu-sham's lifeless body was discovered in his closet. At that moment, the police knew Chang Lok-man was also dead, and her body was still out there, somewhere. With the new lead, officers launched a full-scale search of Tong's house. They found Im Pyu-sham's belongings, her backpack, her shoes, and most chilling of all, a stack of twins' holographic cards, exactly like the ones Chang Lok-man collected. It was proof that both girls had been inside that house. Then, outside the building, investigators noticed something suspicious. A large bag of used cement. A seasoned investigator immediately sensed the worst. He's hidden a body somewhere. They brought in specialized scanners to check for freshly patched concrete inside the house. For hours, they searched every possible hidden spot, but by the next morning, they still hadn't found her. That's when they turned their focus outside. Near the backyard, they noticed a sealed drainage well. The opening was covered with wooden planks, cemented tightly around the edges, with an air conditioning unit placed on top to weigh it down. They broke it open, and as soon as the seal was shattered, a wave of unbearable stench filled the air. Inside the 4-foot-deep sewage pit, floating in filthy, stagnant water, was a naked, decomposing corpse. Her body was covered in cement stain. Her face was no longer recognizable. Forensics had to extract DNA samples to confirm her identity, and when the results come back, it was Chang Lok-man. Her throat had been crushed from strangulation. Her body showed clear signs of rape. Tong Wing-kwang had violated and murdered both girls and had been prepared to do the same to his own children. But the true horror was yet to come, because when the police dug deeper, they realized that his crimes weren't just about murder. They were about something much darker, a ritual of vengeance, a belief in a twisted, supernatural curse, the 5 Ghosts Vengeance Curse. Tong Wing-kwang was born in 1959 in Taiwan. His father worked in Vietnam, while his mother was a housewife. He was the only son, with 3 older sisters. At the age of 4, his family moved from Taiwan to Vietnam. By 15, his dark tendencies began to surface. He was caught spying on his sister while she bathed. Enraged, his father threw him out of the house. The following year, when his family illegally fled to the United States, they left him behind, alone, abandoned, and with no one to rely on. Tong was forced to survive on his own, wandering through Southeast Asia. He eventually ended up in Thailand, where he became an apprentice to a local sorcerer. It was there that he learned the ways of black magic, rituals, curses, and practices steeped in superstition and cruelty. By 1979, he returned to Vietnam, but his dream was still America, attempting to illegally enter the US. He joined the smuggling operation by boat, but fate had other plans. His ship ran aground in Hong Kong. He was caught by the authorities and sent to the Twin Mong refugee camp. Upon learning that underage refugees received preferential treatment, Tong Wing Kwang falsified his age, claiming to be 5 years younger. He also lied about having family waiting for him in the US. But when asked for details, he couldn't provide a clear answer. With no way to verify his claims, the authorities kept him in Hong Kong until his identity could be confirmed. For the next 3 years, Tong remained inside the refugee camp. But he was far from a quiet detained. He was constantly involved in fights, frequently attacked another refugee, and was known for his violent outbursts. Yet, due to Hong Kong's lenient refugee policies, which aimed to expedite foreign resettlement, his crimes were never officially recorded. And so, during his year inside the camp, he shaped himself into an aggressive, violent man, untouched by the consequences of his actions. Eventually, as he grew too old to remain in the refugee system, he was forced to leave. With no prospects and no formal education, he took a factory job in an electronics plant. But his habits never changed. He became known for skipping out on meals without paying, extorting others, and even spying on women in public restaurants. Now, without the refugee camp acting as his shield, he faced real consequences. Over the next few years, he was arrested 5 times and eventually served a 1-year prison sentence. By the time he was in his 20s, he had learned his lesson, at least temporarily. For a while, he kept a low profile, finding work in Longping Village, Ring Long, as a night watchman and transport worker. He even settled down and started a family. But there was something deeply unsettling about his marriage. His wife was only 14 years old, a child bride. She bore him a son while still a minor. Even then, the signs were clear. Tong Wing Kwang's dark desire had already begun to manifest. From this point, it became clear Tong Wing Kwang had a deeply disturbing inclination. Over time, he used his earnings to lure young girls into his home. He bought a computer, a VCD player, and gaming consoles. Even installed a slide inside his house, all with a sinister purpose: to attract underage girls from the village. His teenager's wife, however, was kind-hearted. Whenever she saw young girls coming over, she would intervene and send them home, constantly disrupting his plans, except for one girl. No matter how much his wife was urged to leave, she refused to go. That girl was Peng Lao Sheng. She hated school and spent most of her time at Tong's house playing video games. Before long, she developed feelings for him. The relationship became physical, and she began staying overnight at his home. Peng Lao Sheng's parents didn't neglect their daughter, but they simply couldn't control her. They had reported her disappearance to the police, and when officers found her at Tong Wing Kwang's house, they tried to bring her home, but she refused to testify against him. She insisted, "I'm here willingly." Without her cooperation, the police could do nothing, and so the case was dropped. In 1992, at just 14 years old, Peng Lao Sheng ignored her parents' objections and moved into Tong's home. She didn't just move in, she became part of a disrupting family dynamic. Living under the same roof were Tong Wing Kwang, his first wife, their son, and now Peng Lao Sheng. What happened next was unthinkable. She and Tong openly called each other husband and wife, even in front of his first wife. Tong's wife, horrified by the situation, pleaded with him to let the girl go. "She's just a child," she said. But neither Tong nor Peng listened, forced to endure a chaotic, twisted household. His wife couldn't take it anymore. She filed for divorce, took her son, cut all ties with him. Peng's parents made several attempts to take her home. They begged, pleaded, even threatened legal actions, but she refused to leave. She even threatened to throw herself into the river if they forced her to go home. Rumor began to spread in the village. Had Tong used black magic on her? Some suspected he had performed a dark ritual to keep her under his control. But in reality, the truth was far simpler. She was young, rebellious, and Tong's financial stability made her feel secure. He had money, he gave her gifts, and she enjoyed the freedom of being away from her parents' authority. By 1997, Pong became pregnant with Tong's child. The two moved to Pakshansun, where she gave birth to a son. But motherhood changed nothing. She was still restless, still wild. So she left the baby with her parents and continued to live as she pleased. Over the next few years, she had 2 more daughters, but she abandoned them too, leaving them in the care of her family. Meanwhile, Tong was still working as a transport worker, bringing in a good income. For a time, life seemed stable, but then everything fell apart. Tong fell into gambling. His debts began piling up, and their finances crumbled. Pong also became addicted to gambling, spending recklessly and driving them deeper into financial ruin. The easy money was gone, the comfortable life was over, and then she left him. In August 2002, Pong Lao Shan had had enough of her miserable life. She wanted out. That was when she met a karaoke bar owner, and in no time the two became inseparable. She stopped coming home. She stayed out all night. She was done with Tong Wing Kwan. Tong, left behind in their crumbling home, was furious. It felt like he had lost control over her. She no longer obeyed him. She no longer satisfied him. In a fit of rage and humiliation, he beat her violently. But Pong refused to be intimidated. Right after the beating, she called her parents, told them to come and get her, and moved in with the karaoke bar owner. She walked out on everything, even her own children. At first, she still answered his calls, but soon she stopped picking up altogether. When Tong finally got through, he threatened her, "If you don't come back, I'll poison all 3 of our kids." But Pong laughed him off. "Even if you kill them, I still won't come back." She wasn't afraid of him anymore, and that drove him insane. With no other way to control her, Tong turned to the only thing he had left: black magic. He remembered something he had learned in Thailand long ago, a dark ritual called the 5 Ghost Vengeance Curse. A ritual that required 5 blood-related sacrifices to create a vengeful spirit powerful enough to kill the intended target. In his twisted mind, Tong decided he would kill himself and his 5 children, turning them into vengeful ghosts and drag Pong to hell with them. But there was a problem. He didn't have 5 children. So, for the time being, he put his plan on hold. Then came December 4. That day, Tong took his son to Yunlong Plaza to buy twins holograph cards, and that's when he saw her, a girl in a red jacket, Chen Lok-man. She looked just like his ex-wife, and at that moment, a dark thought took root. If I force myself onto girls who look like her, does that count as blood ties? Tong Wing Kwan engaged Chen Lok-man in casual conversation, quickly discovering her obsession with the pop duo twins. Exploiting her innocence, he lied, telling her he had plenty of holographic cards at home, and that she could have as many as she wanted. Excited, she followed him home. Once inside, he let her play in the living room with his own children. Perhaps in some twisted remnant of humanity, he couldn't bring himself to harm his own flesh and blood. Instead, he went to the bedroom and picked up the phone. He called Pong Lao Shan, and she picked up. Perhaps, just perhaps, the story would have ended differently, but she didn't. And that single missed call sealed Chen Lok-man's fate. Consumed by rage and humiliation, he violated and murdered the girl. Her lifeless body was dumped into a sewage well. The next day, Tong told Pong what he had done. She ignored him. She didn't care. And so, Tong descended even further into madness. He stopped sending his kids to school. He chased away social workers. Then, one day, he met another girl, Yin Pyu Shang. The moment he saw her name, Shang, he felt an airy connection, as if being with her was the same as being with his wife again. He befriended her, gained her trust, and when the moment was right, he brought her home. She suffered the same fate as Chen Lok-man. Now, all that remained was for him to burn himself and his 3 children alive. With that final act, he believed the 5 Ghost Vengeance Curse would be complete. He would become a vengeful spirit, and Pong Lao Shan would finally pay for abandoning him. But the world doesn't work that way. Fate doesn't reward evil. And so, before he could complete his twisted ritual, he was caught. On February 25, 2004, the Hong Kong High Court delivered its verdict. Chen Wing Kwan was found guilty of 2 counts of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. He was also convicted of 1 count of attempted murder, resulting in an addiction 8-year sentence. All sentences were to be served concurrently. He would never walk free again. Inside prison, Tong remained the coward he always was. A journalist interviewed one of his cellmates, who described him as spineless, always clinging to whoever held the most power inside. He's a classic opportunist, his cellmate said. He never stands on his own. He follows the strongest and preys on the weakest. Even behind bars, he did what he had always done, bully those weaker than him. Looking back, Chu Ying-kwang was not just a murderer. He was a deeply broken monster. A man who couldn't track women his own age, so he preyed on children. A man who couldn't handle rejection, so he turned to black magic. A man who was too much of a coward to face life in an adult world, so he took out his failures on the innocent. He kidnapped, tortured, and murdered out of fear, not strength, and in the end, he died a failure, just as he had lived. A man who's not only hated, but also pitiful. My name is Charles, focus on crime case storytelling. If you like my channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification button. If there's a case you want me to explore and tell, feel free to leave a comment. I'll see you next time.